WV Uncommon Place. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts, along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episodes. The Uncommon Place digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our Uncommon Place.
Howdy, everybody. This is the end of 2024. My name is JR Sparrow, and I have been a host for a long time. I've been doing podcasting for so long, I forgot how I did podcasting. And shout out to DJ, DJI, Osmo Pocket 3 for the nice camera. I paid for it. They didn't give me nothing. Shout out to Rodecaster Pro 2 for being there and for my trusty iPad I've always used. So here's a topic that's going to be going into the new year on interviews and sessions. We're going to be talking about addiction. That'll be the first lead off episode. And I am always asked my opinion on addiction and how I feel about it, being the torchbearer for the state of West Virginia. Well, I'm not the torchbearer. I'm not that guy. But I do want to say this. Addiction affects people in many different ways. It hurts. I've seen it break families up. I've seen it take away. I've never seen it add anything. I've only seen addiction always take away. And people have this idea that with addiction, you're supposed to have this hero or heroine story, and not heroin like the drug, but heroine, like the female hero. You're supposed to rise from it and be all great and all that other stuff. And I do not believe the hype in that. I don't believe that is the full circus that is intended. I think that addiction is something that you're going to always go through. You're going to keep going through, and you're going to work through it. And you're going to get to a certain light, and you're going to get to a certain place where life is different than when you were heavy in your addiction. I don't want to ever capitalize it. I don't want anyone to ever feel like I think that someone, once they get out of rehab, that they're done with addiction. No, addiction is something that's going to be a lifelong thing. It's going to be something that you're going to deal with continuously, and you're going to keep dealing with it because of the urge and that nature and stuff like that. And I am no psychologist, no psychiatrist, or anything like that. So I'm not going to deem anything that addiction is a choice or it's not a choice. I want to just clearly put it in my opinion, and I want you all to take it for what it is. And if you don't like my opinion, this is the one time I will tell you, turn off the podcast. You can come back for the next episode. But the thing that I want to put to light here is this. There is always an incident. There's always a place. There's always a time. There is something that goes along with the addiction. And that's where I'm going to leave it at there. But the things, the aftermath in the middle of what happened with addiction, I have seen them personally, and I have watched them close up and from afar. And I will say that the greatest thing that I've seen come out of it is when someone is able to acknowledge responsibility of it, and they take a power over themselves, and they decide that, hey, this is something that I need to take care of. This is something that I want to be responsible with. And going into the different levels of addiction, the one that I always like to talk about first is, and this is not about opiates or anything like that. This is actually about alcoholism. Alcoholism is something that people treat two ways, in my opinion. Some people let it be a masking agent, and then other people let it be this thing that they go get help for. The people that use it as a masking agent get encouragement from the people around them, because I've seen it way too much. The closest people to people say, oh, she's just doing a little bit of this, or he's doing a little bit of that drinking. It's not hurting them. It's not doing this or that. And in light of those people encouraging them, at some point that encouragement becomes an afterthought. And it takes these people away from who they are, from events and different things that they could be doing in life. So, using that form, which, like I said, alcoholism, doing opiates or doing anything is whatever. But just that fine example I want to give there. And here's one thing that, like, I've noticed, and I've had to have this weird apprehension. I even seen it in my personal life, not me drinking or anything, but people around me that have great spirit, when they are not under the influence. But the influence is a nightly thing. It's something that takes over. It's something that is a coping mechanism. And when that coping mechanism comes into play, that's when we slap things like this with addiction. Even with caffeine, people do that. Not to the severity of what alcohol can do, because you can get in the car and take someone's life when you're drinking. You can be impaired with alcohol and hurt someone. So the point I'm trying to get across with this before we get into this episode in the new year is this: like, accountability and responsibility for these things happens within the person. I am a firm believer in all of us executing a way to help them and do that, but it has to be at the time that that person's willing to get the help. It can't be you forcing that on someone. And that's something that, in seeing it in the great state of West Virginia and helping, and watching people, when people get that acceptance, which acceptance comes from building up that self-esteem that is very hard to get. When a person is lacking that self-esteem, they're going to do these things until they decide to build that self-esteem. And not everybody is capable of building that self-esteem without agents. And with agents, I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about, it could just be an affirmation. It could be something, a picture that just shows them at a time when they had self-esteem. So my thing is if you have somebody that's like that and you want to reach out to them and help them the best way how. And that's real simple. Stand by and be a shoulder. But when their addiction becomes detrimental to the whole ecosystem, that's when other things should be applied, and you should go get counseled help or whatever type of help needs to be done for that person. I'm not a clinician or anything like that, so I don't get out here and preach or speak about these things, but I see what it does to people, and I see how lives are torn apart by these things. And it's disheartening because some of the greatest people that you get on earth get taken away by these agents of negativity. So, like always, let's just go ahead and let that outro hit. You guys like and subscribe. And I want to thank you all for this year, for staying with West Virginia Commonplace, staying with interview sessions, and just being a part of the whole mix and just letting me explore and do so much fun stuff this year. Next year will be amazing. Goodbye, 2024.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at onecommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.